War caused by the USSR and USA battles. In the Vietnam War, France was also one of the main countries involved. Hey, wake up. There's test tomorrow.
What?
Let's study.
Ugh, what am I going to do? Oh, I need help.
Did someone ask for help?
Who are you guys?
The history team.
And we're here to help you. I have an exam on the Cold War tomorrow on Vietnam and Korea and
Calm down. What do you need to know?
everything about the Cold War and Korea and Vietnam and what happened. Everything. Some people say that the Cold War started when the US dropped 2 bombs, not one, but 2 bombs on Japan in 1945, in Nagasaki and Hiroshima. But the conflict in Korea began when it was split into 2 by the US and the USSR, who were also responsible for the escalation of the conflict in Vietnam.
By the way, it's important to know that both these nations were both colonies before the war ended, which is an important factor to why the conflict in Asia was in these countries.
Why is that?
Oh, it was mainly because the Cold War was another form of imperialism.
China and the US took advantage of these unstable territories to impose their ideals and influence, since imperialism was still present in the US and USSR. But why did the US and the USSR do that specifically to Korea and Vietnam?
Because in Korea, after World War II, it was divided in half. One side belonged to the US and the other side to the USSR. In Vietnam, since France was an ally of the US, it still had power over half of Vietnam. The other half was communist. The US found an opportunity to spread and defend capitalism.
In Korea, since the territory was divided into 38 parallel half of Korea, it was easier for the US to spread its capitalist side and the USSR to spread the communist side.
Aside from that, both Asian countries also were rich in natural resources, which added were the reason why the US and USSR desired these countries. Okay, I understand, but I'm a little confused on the background history of Korea and Vietnam, you know? In Vietnam, the story began long before. The territory was already in conflict, with half of Vietnam trying to get rid of France, which still had full power over the other half.
When an important communist Vietnamese leader came back to Vietnam, he solidified the communist half of Vietnam to fight against France.
This leader assisted the US in the Cold War and asked for help in exchange. But the US could not support communists in the middle of the war, so it supported France.
How does this relate to imperialism?
In imperialism, there are certain cycles that repeat themselves. The one that fits into this situation is that imperialism requires a strong and able government to basically take over incompetent and weak government. That's what was happening there in Vietnam and Korea. But towards the end, Vietnam and Korea were utterly dependent on the foreign governments.
Like the supposed leaders at the time, like Kim and Ho Chi Minh for the communist side, and Chung and Diem for the capitalist, were basically chess pieces, or better yet, pawns, or marionettes, for the real players like Mao, Stalin, and Truman.
Okay, so let me see if I understood. The US and USSR basically used Vietnam and Korea for their own benefits. That was because 1. They were both rich in resources. 2. They were easier to approach, since in Korea, half of the territory already belonged to the US and the other half to the USSR, and in Vietnam, US's ally France was still in power. 3. Like in the Cold War, both Korea and Vietnam were having conflict between capitalism and communism, hence the US wanted capitalism to win and USSR communism. 4.
The Cold War was another form of imperialism, and those were the two regions in Asia that could more easily be approached.
I'm on the rocky road, heading down off the mountain slope.
Well, you got any?
If you're a student
And you need help.
You can call us.
and we'll be there. Teach biology.
Teach physics.
We teach chemistry.
We teach mathematics.
We teach history.
Everything.
Everything?
Everything.
Oh, yeah. Mira niña, como te lo digo. Camina, cada paso tuyo a mí me contamina. Mueve las caderas como gelatina, lindura divina. Te comería con pan y mantequilla, candela, un par de chupitos de ron.